So you can access book reviews on your left-hand menu. And once you click into it, but one of the things you should notice is that you have an accountant-only view on the top right-hand corner. And this essentially means that only you have access to this as an accountant or bookkeeper. Your clients do not have visibility here. Now, Books Review has been out for a while, but the features have been refined, I would say, over the past year or so to actually just give us more functionality and make the process a bit easier. You will notice underneath you have a time frame. If you click the little pencil icon, you have the option of choosing whether you want to work in the current year or whether you want to work in the prior year. You can also review your books by month or by quarter, depending on how you do your reviews and what your service offering is. Once you pick a time frame and we drop down the list, you can pick which quarter you'd like to work on. For the purposes of today's demo, I'm going to be working in the October-December quarter. So once I've set my time frame at the top, it now pulls up all the information relevant to that quarter only. And so you will notice the first thing you see, it says, before you start, make sure your books are up to date. And this is really one of the most important things. In an ideal world, we would like to say that all our bank reconciliations are done before we go in for our monthly or quarterly reviews. But there's a number of times where I do hop into files only to find there was a bit of a timing difference with the bank feed, and I now have to look into new transactions. So this is really just highlighting within this period if I have any outstanding bank transactions that I need to allocate. So here in the brackets, it says 2, so it's indicating to me that there are 2 transactions I need to look at. And clicking on the Review Now hyperlink will forward me into the banking screen. So here are my 2 transactions that I can go in and I can allocate. Oh, sorry about that. I just need to hop in. So essentially that warning came up because I had a closing date that was set in the file. This is a demo file, so various people hop in at times. So I just needed to go in and change that setting. So now that I've allocated my transactions, I can go back into my books review and I should refresh this and it should take that down to null. So you'll see that 2 has now changed to 0. So one of the features that I like throughout the books review, and as well as you'll notice in the prep for taxes function, is the little timer here. And basically I can very quickly look at it and get a sense of what work's been completed in the file. So as I'm working through my tasks here, I can actually tick it off as being done. The purpose of transaction review is really to try and pick up errors and misstatements at a transactional level. So now that I've allocated my transactions in my bank statement, I come into my uncategorized transactions. And this area is typically used when you want to allocate things off your bank feed, but you're unsure about the category that it needs to go to. So bookkeepers sometimes tend to generically put it into the uncategorized category for review at month end or quarter end. So I can come in and see, okay, I have two transactions and they need to be allocated to a specific account. So when I click on the 2 transactions, the little ribbon pops up. So if I know where to classify them, I can hit the reclassify button and reclassify them in bulk. Or if I'm unsure and I actually need more information to be able to allocate this to an account, I can ask my client. So as soon as I hit the Ask Client, this dialog box pops up on the right-hand corner. And it does pop up with a generic message, so that's kind of helpful because you don't have to retype the same thing if you do just need to know what the transaction relates to. You can go in and actually attach a document as well if there was a working paper you wanted to attach to this query. And at the bottom, before you send the query, make sure you have the notify client turned on. Once you do that, you can actually share that with your client. And you can notice that in the client's info column, it's turned into waiting, which means you're waiting on information from your client. At this stage, your client will get a notification and they will get an email to say that they have a query from their accountant. They need to log into QuickBooks and go to the My Accountant function, which will then allow them to respond to queries. If I wanted to allocate this to an account, because I know where they're going, I can go in and allocate it. So now there's nothing to review and I can change that to done. The next level of transactions are really the transactions without payees. From my perspective, personally, sometimes I'm not too fussed with this in smaller clients, mostly because the memo with the description can pick up enough detail for me to give me that information. But if there's an added layer of reporting that I am getting out of my QuickBooks regarding supplier information and costing, etc., then I probably want to come in and complete this. So to do this, again, you will notice as soon as I clicked on the transaction, the ribbon opens up and it gives me 4 options. Again, I can ask the client for more information, or I can add the payee. Void and delete will void or delete the transaction. I do come from an audit background, and so I'm not a massive fan of deleting anything. I am usually more go and correct the misstatement rather than delete transactions off your file. So you can select a few transactions, and you will notice here it's actually telling me that I have six little pages of transactions without payees. So I can keep on moving through my screens to select the ones that I would like. And you will notice as I move to the screen that it is allowing me to select multiple transactions. So I'm not losing the first transactions that I selected on the screen. So at this point, I can add the payee. I'm just going to pick something a bit generic here. I can apply that. It's allocated payees to those transactions, and that's moved off the screen. Once I'm done there, I can come in and mark that off as done. One of the key things with doing GST is reviewing the transactions that don't have GST. Now, it is common to have transactions without GST because not every transaction has an GST implication. And this screen is really just consolidating that report for me and alerting me to, there are these transactions that exist within my file. I need to review them to ensure that the classification is correct. So again, I can just flip through the screen. Looking at it, the first thing that pops out to me is postage, which could possibly include GST. But looking at this here, I can see it's a USD, so it's telling me that it's probably a foreign supplier and it's not applicable. So once I review that and I'm happy that the transactions should exclude GST, again, come in and click done. At the bottom here, you have undeposited funds and unapplied payments. And really, there are clients who want to manage their own accounts payable and accounts receivable, sometimes tend to have undeposited funds and unapplied payments, which is not always picked up through the bank reconciliation process and matched to a bank transaction. And if that does occur, then the transactions will accumulate here and prompt a review. In this instance, we've been pretty good in this file, and so there's nothing to do, so we've marked it off as done. Looking at the bottom of the screen, you have a few reports that you are prompted to review. So clicking on this, it will take you into the report center. And ideally, what you want to do here is basically review reports in a high level to make sure that there are no misstatements or it is reasonable. Well, there's nothing in there, so you can try pulling out the. So this pulls up my profit and loss for me, and at this point I can come in and I can select a prior period or the previous year. I can run the report, and it's really allowing me to do just a really quick variance analysis on my profit and loss. Once I've reviewed the report, I can come in and tick it off as done. So when you first utilize Books Review, it gives you a standard list of reports that you can review. However, clicking the Add button here will enable you to add additional reports that you would like to review from this page. So if I go into my Reports tab, and if I click on a report, so it allows me to add additional reports to tailor the review process to my client. Clicking on the arrow drops down either the delete or the edit button. So if you want to come in and refine the naming conventions or change links, you can do that. Or if you want to delete reports off the screen, you simply click the delete button. So once we've worked through our transaction review, the next thing we'll look at is our accounts reconciliation. And this really is focusing on the balance sheet. And clicking on select accounts, you will notice it brings up every single balance sheet item that's connected to this file on this chart of accounts. Now, it may be the case, and it's most likely the case, that you do not reconcile every single balance sheet item, especially if your clients are a little bit smaller and their compliance is not that onerous. So what you can do is come in and tick off, include, exclude the accounts that you would like, save that. And so you only have the accounts that you want to focus on. So looking at my operating account, the first thing that I can see is that there's transactions that have not been reconciled. So clicking on the hyperlink forwards me into the bank account history. And from here, I can go in and complete my reconciliation. So ideally, I shouldn't have a difference, but let's just correct that. This is where we will walk through our bank statement, making sure our general ledger agrees to our physical bank records. So in an ideal world, that's 0. I'm satisfied that my bank reconciliation is accurate. I hit the Finish Now button. And I can go back into my books review. So this is telling me that there's still one unreconciled transaction. And we will come back to that a bit later, but having unreconciled transactions can be normal because even though our GL agreed to our bank statement, there may be a case where we have a few timing differences between cutoff of month end. So at that point, I'm happy with that. At the bottom here, you have uncleared transactions for more than 90 days. I personally like this one because it's actually showing me the aging of my reconciling items. And whilst I did say that it is perfectly normal to have reconciling items within your bank recon, obviously if it's something that's rolling for more than a month, it's an indication that it could be an error within my file that I now need to go and look into a little bit further and fix up. So lastly, I can come in and review my reconciliation report. I can look into my history, I can view my report. And if I wanted to see what that one unreconciled item was, I can see it on my reconciliation report here. So once I've walked through my reconciliation screen, I can go into final review. So final review is picking up the accounts payable and accounts receivable. Again, from an accounting process perspective, this is one of the failings that I do see in a lot of files. People don't go in and review their aging of their payables and debtors. And at year end, when we are doing tax returns, it can become quite messy to clean up. So you should be reviewing your age payables and receivables ideally for two things. One, you should be reviewing it to identify long outstanding items because A, it's an indication of an error, or B, it could be the case that a debtor is no longer recoverable. And on the payable side, if it is long outstanding, it could be an indication that perhaps the business is having a bit of a cash flow issue, which may prompt a further investigation. So I'll just switch into non-quarter so we can see. So once I've moved into the March quarter, we can see that we actually do have accounts payable and accounts receivable items that have been long outstanding. If I clicked on the transaction, it would actually pull up the detail of the transaction for me to do a further review if that was what was needed. At the bottom here, you have the accounts receivable report. And again, you have a review hyperlink. So when you access this report, it's always going to default to 30 days per aging period, and it's going to default to the minimum past days. Again, this is something that you can tailor to your liking or to your needs rather. And hit run, and that will break it down to whatever metric you choose. You can do the same thing with your accounts payable report. So I'll just click on that to give you a visual. It opens it up in the same way. It has the defaults up, then you can change your periods accordingly. So once I've walked through the transactions, the reconciliations, and the final review, I'm now ready to go in and wrap up my file. So here we have a prepare reports functionality. What I like about this is it's letting me prepare a reporting pack for the period that I'm working in. And then it also saves it under my management reporting template so I can go back and use it later. So in this case, you'll see from the drop-down menu, you have a number of reports that you can pick from as well. And also if there was a previous template that I used, I can select that. So going in, we'll call this back. So this is just me giving it a template name. If you have a logo that's uploaded, you can personalize this to your firm's branding. And clicking on the preliminary pages, this is where you can include your covering letter to the report. You have a number of pages that you can add on, and you have a little checkbox that's available to you. So you can choose whether you want to include those standard wording to a particular report or not. And if there's something that you want to delete, you can just come in and hit the delete button and it will delete those text boxes. Clicking on the reports, these are the standard reports that are built into the template. If I want to add a new report, I come in, I like to send out the aging detail, and so I can add those reports. So you can also attach the GST reports. Personally, I put in the summary report for clients because I find that giving them things as a transactional level sometimes kind of tends to overwhelm them. But this is essentially the reporting pack that you can send out to your clients after you do your review. And it can go out at the same time that you're sending them their BAS for their signature and review. And the reason why I say send it out at the same time is because it's really putting that accountability back on the client for their financial information. So when they are signing that BAS return off, they actually have the reports behind that to tell them how the numbers came about in a particular way. Once we're happy with the way that we designed our template, you can come in and you can click Save. Or clicking on the arrow lets you export it, or you can send it directly from the screen. If you come in and click Save on this report, and we go into any reports that you create through your wrapper up screen and books review will start populating in here. So you don't always have to go in and design that template. It will be under management reports waiting for you to use. And using the drop-down arrow here, you can always change the frequency. If there's a report that you created that's no longer applicable, you can always come in and delete it. You can also edit the report from this point and send it off to clients. So the next one is sending out your reporting package. And once you've sent that off, you can just mark it as done. And then once we've worked through this, we are now at the stage where we are ready to prepare and lodge our BAS return. So we click Go to Tax Center, and this will automatically pull up our GST screen. So for those of you who are not familiar with the screen, you'll find your settings on the top right-hand corner. And clicking on tax settings really allows me, or enables me, to change my tax settings for my BAS return. And you might find that you may need to change this if your client's PAYG compliance changes. So if they have to move from quarterly to monthly or vice versa, you can always come in and edit it from here and then save those settings. So here under the To-Do tab, it's giving me the October-December BAS return that I need to prepare. And so coming in, it pulls up my GST. And here you have the hyperlinks to reports. So if you wanted to do an additional review past the books review functionality, you can click on the hyperlinks and download your GST reports and review from here. But we work on the assumption that everything's been reviewed in books review, and we're ready to just do a high-level review here. Here, in this particular case, we have PAYG withholdings, and it's automatically populated that from the payroll function, because payroll is kept in QuickBooks. If you had other PAYG that you needed to report, you could tick this box here. And then lastly, we come into the summary screen. So at this stage, we're pretty much happy that we would like to lodge it. So once we've lodged our BAS, you can see that it says marked as lodged, and we have a little record payment button here. So this one is I like to use as a clearing account to help me balance out my GST accounts correctly at the end of quarter. In particular, if there's a file that's set on accrual basis and GST is typically done on the cash basis, if you try and do it through all one clearing account, it can become quite messy. So what I like to do is I come in and I record a dummy payment. Some people try to record it directly from their bank account. I think, again, this can be quite messy because it's going to create timing differences on your bank reconciliation. And if you don't monitor this correctly, or you have different people or different touch points within your file, it can get lost in the data. So what I do is I create a clearing account called ATO payments, and I record all my payments into that account, and I click save. So now that I've recorded the payments, it'll all populate under the payments tab. And so when I'm reconciling my bank feeds and I pick up a payment that has been made to the ATO in respect of my BAS, I allocate those payments to the ATO payments account that I created as a dummy account. A couple of things to note is you can only create that account to record for payment as a cash and cash equivalent. So make sure in your naming convention, it's very apparent that this is not a live bank account. And if you have different people working, for example, a bookkeeping team or an accounting team, you want to ensure that they know not to use that account outside of recording ATO payments. So once we have lodged our BAS return in QuickBooks, we're now ready to go and finalize this through our tax software, lodge it.